Welcome, symbol lovers, to another edition of Understanding the Symbols of Hieronymus Bosch. And this time around, we're looking at the Garden of Earthly Delights. These are the outside panels. They're on hinges. They swing open and reveal the three inside panels. And Bosch has more or less drawn a big X on it and put at the very center of the panel an egg. And so this time around, we're going to define the symbol of the egg. And whenever you see something balanced on someone's head, that means they've mastered it. They've got it right. So the egg in the center sets the theme for the whole painting. And let's look at the other panels and what's at the center of them. For instance, in Eden, we have the fountain of life there. But hidden inside the fountain of life is an owl. An owl is a bird. Birds lay eggs. Birds come from eggs. One aspect of a symbolic owl is wisdom. And so there's wisdom in the Garden of Eden. But if we look on the right panel, what we have in the dead center is darkness. And symbolically, darkness is ignorance. It's the opposite of wisdom. And we see a land lacking wisdom, full of violence all around it, a hell on earth. But above the darkness is a nice cozy tavern. It's where you'd want to go to find refreshment. And how do you gain access to this place of refuge in this hellish world? You do so by a ladder. And what is a ladder? A ladder is a straight and narrow path, the path of wisdom. And of course, that's another name for the teachings of Jesus, the straight and narrow path. So Bosch has given us a visual pun. A man going up a straight and narrow path to find refreshment for his soul in this dark and terrible world. To help us define the egg, we're going to use a few principles for understanding the symbols of Hieronymus Bosch. There's about 40. We'll just use a few of them. Such as, it's exactly what it looks like, or it is what it does. We'll find it in the Bible, and there is no such thing as magic. It's always about Jesus. Think like an Ebionite, and it might be a pun, such as a man climbing a ladder, a straight and narrow path. So, to define the symbol of the egg, we just need to remember it's exactly what it looks like, or it is what it does. So what does an egg do? An egg is a symbol of metamorphosis. Inside its thin shell, there is goo that, if it's properly cared for and the proper amount of time passes, it will produce the next generation. It will produce life. So it's all about fertility, the future, and hope. There are many eggs hidden in the Garden of Earthly Delights, and by studying them we can get Bosch's definition of what an egg is and what it does. We'll start at the stony tower in the background of the Eden panel and notice the egg in its foreground. Notice that we see birds walking into the egg, but we don't see any birds walking out of the eggs. What we see are birds flying away from the mountain. So they go into the egg walking, they go somewhere, but they're transformed into flying birds. So after entering the egg, they have been transformed. They have now reached their potential as birds and no longer walk, but have learned to fly. And birds are symbols of freedom because they fly, and also of spiritual people, because they fly off and they disappear into the heavens, which is the dwelling place of God. In the center panel, we see a similar arrangement, but this time it's for humans. There is a hollowed out egg, and people are piling in it, but no one is leaving. So they're going somewhere. They're being transformed somehow. And for now, that's all we need to know. But I think it's safe to assume that, like the birds, they're going to be transformed into better people. And now we're going to look at a different transformation. This one takes place in the hellscape in the right-hand panel, and it is people being devoured whole by this Egyptian-looking monster sitting on the gold throne that is also a commode. And to figure this one out, we need to look it up in the Bible, where Jesus warns, "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but fear those who kill the body and the soul." So here we have another egg transforming people, only this time it's to the negative. They're going through the monster, passing through him and into a dark pit where they will dwell. So they're in spiritual darkness again, even worse than they were before when they were on the outside of this hellscape. So this is an example of a bad egg of metamorphosis, but we're going to look at one more egg before we leave the hellscape, and that's this little egg that's very close to the center, which tells you it's important in this case. And it's the man balancing the egg on his back. And here we have another example of it's exactly what it looks like. The man is balancing the egg. He's mastered the egg. He's keeping the egg safe, but at great personal cost to himself. So he is keeping hope alive in this dark and violent world. So now we're ready to look at a symbol from the center panel and another egg. So we can see that this is a pretty big egg, and it's affecting a metamorphosis, a transformation of these two characters. And it must be very wise because it's being overseen by a giant owl. And because everything relates to Jesus, and Jesus said his followers would produce fruit, it must be a good thing because we see the fruit they've produced. And it must be voluntary because we can see they each have a free hand. They could do whatever they like, but they're following the advice of the owl. They're going through the egg, and what they were before and what they will become is beyond the scope of this video, but you can see they are gleefully allowing themselves to be transformed according to wisdom, according to the wisdom of the owl, which of course contains the wisdom of Jesus. So now, in order to figure out what's going on in the giant egg in the hellscape, we need to review a few things real quick. Okay, in Eden, the origin of everything, we have an owl, and an owl lays eggs, and they're very wise. In the center, we also have an egg, but you can see here the egg represents fertility, promise of the future, and everything is imbalanced. And in the hellscape, what we have in the center is just the opposite of wisdom. We have darkness. So we have the source of the egg in the left panel. In the middle panel, we have the egg being preserved for the next generation, but eggs eventually hatch. And so in the third panel, we have what's left over from a hatched egg. So now we can begin to understand the hollow egg and the cozy tavern hidden inside it. And what we're going to use first is we're going to realize it's always about Jesus. We're going to find it in the Bible, and we're going to look for the pun. And the pun is, of course, the man going up the straight and narrow ladder to get to the resting place that there is inside the egg. So we have to find in the Bible what Jesus says about rest. And we can find that at Matthew 11:28 through 30, which reads, "Come to me, all you who are burdened. Take my yoke and learn, for I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." I don't think the pun between yoke and yoke was intended. So the reward for staying on the straight and narrow path is finding rest and refreshment for your soul. So, because the people inside the tavern are doing the work of Jesus and giving rest to people's souls who come by the straight and narrow path, that tells us that what they're doing in the hollow egg is they're carrying out the gospel of Jesus. What hatched out of the egg was, you could say it was Jesus, or you could say it was the teachings of Jesus. In this case, thinking like an Ebionite means to focus on the teachings of the living Jesus. That is, doing works rather than having faith. It's important to note that when the Garden of Earthly Delights was painted, that the church had been burning to death homosexuals, Jews, witches, and heretics for 500 years. So Bosch has given us not a picture of hell or the afterlife, but a depiction of the spiritual life of Western civilization. And if you speak out against the church, you're liable to be hauled into one of their torture chambers or worse. So Bosch has put his protest in the form of symbols, but he meant them as puzzles that we are expected to figure out using, your knowledge of the Bible and certain insights about symbol reading. So these are puzzles to be solved, not magical visions. So to recap, we can say that in the world of Hieronymus Bosch, the egg symbol can be understood as life, the future, hope, fertility, renewal, a legacy, a place of arrivals and departures, and metamorphosis. I should add wisdom to the definitions because every egg contains the wisdom of God that makes the transformation happen, and also secrecy because you can't see how it's done. And this all leads us back to those outside panels of the Garden of Earthly Delights. And we can see the way Bosch has used his symbols that he wants us to think of the earth as God's egg. Anyway, it's time for me to slide on out of here. I would like to point out that about 90% of this material is original to myself, and the other 10% is stuff that's been laying around for thousands of years. So until next time, embrace wisdom, and thank you for watching Understanding the Symbols of Hieronymus Bosch.